Welcome to Day 2 of Summit. I hope you're as energized as I am. This never feels like a simple workplace conference. It feels like a retreat. Like so many of you, the person I am entering Summit will not be the same person after this Friday. I will reflect, I will be challenged, I will connect with my community, and I will proudly admit to myself that there are so many things I'm wrong about. The brilliant astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson says it best: I love being wrong because that means in that instant, I learned something new. This week, channel your inner Neil deGrasse Tyson. Embrace being wrong about non-binary identities. Embrace being wrong about your vision of how DEI work is done in China. Embrace being wrong about thinking technology is a barrier rather than a platform for real human connection. Embrace being wrong about what you think you know about the experience of a person who does not share your geography, gender identity, orientation, race, ethnicity, or physical ability. Embrace it all. Give yourself grace and reward yourself with the gifts of being wrong, new knowledge, and empathy. I want to ask you to think back to when more of us were in person, to when we had meetings. Visualize for a moment your usual conference room or team huddle area. Did you have a go-to place in these work meetings? Do you try to sit as close to the boss as possible? Are you the senior leader positioning yourself at the head of the table? Have you ever thought about why you sit where you sit in a meeting? Were you coached, or did you read about how you should be closest to the most senior person in the room, or the bold power move of directly from that person? There's tons of business literature and hacky advice on how to carve out your power with where you sit. Well, my favorite place to be is antithetical to all of the conventional advice. It's as close to the door or corner of the room as possible. It recently occurred to me that quite literally since I was in kindergarten, that's been my favorite spot, all the way through graduate school. And I dug a little deeper at this peculiar habit, and it dawned on me that so much of what I know, my belief systems, my critical thinking, it started when I was a little kid. Never one to linger around a kid's table at a gathering, one of my favorite things growing up was to observe the adults, my parents, their friends, our neighbors. They had their own way of speaking, guards down. I took in how they debated politics, talked about their challenges and fears, laughed at their own jokes. They acted and sounded so differently with each other than when they interacted with me. And I got to view all of this, unnoticed, from the corner. My richest lessons in life began with these anthropological observations. It's tempting to think that the boss at the head of the table or the teacher in front of the class has the best vantage point. But think about it. The center of the table gives you this view. The corner gives you this, the fullest possible view. When you are not the center of attention, you get to take it all in. The power dynamics at play, the bonds people forge through subtle cues to each other, the reception the boss or teacher gets from the full range of people in the room. Those of us in the LGBTQ community have historically and continue to be relegated to corners and margins. I'm not suggesting we romanticize what that means. Quite literally, our marginalization means that in the US today, we still lack fundamental civil rights protections in federal law. Until the Equality Act passes and becomes law of the land, our rights are subject to the whims of state houses and friendly or unfriendly administrations. It means that as we gather today, there are members of our community languishing in jails or fearing death because of who they are. It means that trans, non-binary, and all of us who love someone in this community are terrified by the global violence against them, both literal and in the form of public policy. It means the persistence of anti-LGBTQ bias and workplace discrimination has cascading effects on our access to economic security, healthcare, and well-being. But there is a duality here, not a contradiction. We can and do capitalize on the unique knowledge and relationships we develop from the margins. There is magic there. This strength and perspective is at the core of the innovation that's driven the change we celebrate today. How we as a community took a moonshot goal of forging equality workplace by workplace and made it a reality, well ahead of most lawmakers. Absent any legal protections and at the mercy of punitive, discriminatory laws, we reimagined workforce inclusion, and in doing so, we innovated and created a new type of social change work. We couldn't tell companies they would run afoul of the law if they were not equitable to us. We told them instead that hiring us, keeping us, and promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion is not a legal mandate, it's the mandate of smart business. We have something to add. Today, 9 in 10 Fortune 500 companies do what our own federal statutes in the U.S. do not. They have consistent sexual orientation and gender identity non-discrimination protections. Today, we recognize that there is, in fact, an LGBTQ leadership edge. We saw it borne out in the rich data from our first ever global LGBT+ Innovation Jam with IBM earlier this year. On a wide global scale, LGBT+ leaders demonstrate greater emotional intelligence, more nimbleness, and a refusal to accept the status quo that doesn't serve us or our businesses. That sounds like the next CEO or senator I want. When we make knowledge and strategies our own, tectonic shifts follow. Right now, around the world, visibility and comfort with gender expansion is at an all-time high in modern history. Here in the US alone, new polling shows 42% of Americans personally know someone who is transgender. About 1 in 4 Americans personally know someone who uses non-binary pronouns such as they to refer to themselves. And more than any other topic this year, from our partners across Latin America and the Asia-Pacific region, inclusive language and trans and non-binary best practices are top requests because so many more in the community are visible. Not a US import, but a mass claiming of self through language and identity that is fully homegrown. That's why we have multilingual, multicultural resources to support this journey. The lens from the margins of traditional gender is what is illuminating all of our liberation. When a non-binary person can move through their day without harassment or fear, so too can I, a cisgender woman. So too can the cis man performing constraining gender roles against his own comfort. Look at the impact our perspectives and concepts have had on the discourse of mental health. People come out as living with depression or anxiety. That which was previously taboo is now providing comfort to so many. Everyone has mental health, not just those who are othered. Does that sound familiar? Everyone has an orientation and a gender identity. Deeply internalizing mental health and well-being is central to effective management. That's why we have centered the topic and implementation guidance throughout Summit and beyond. What was the most potent ingredient in this change work? Our stories, our truths. These became our power. We have all evolved out of the old constructs of the closet as the sum total of who we are. We are constantly telling our stories, interrupting assumptions about who we are, and engaging colleagues to be allies. Telling our stories is not just about human connection, it is also strategic. Being in this work for over 14 years, I can tell you with authority that the decisions that once seemed too radical to implement and are now mainstream, companies weighing in on marriage equality, companies cutting through institutional bias to extend trans-inclusive healthcare coverage, these happened because of the power of our stories. Data is important, but it's when we share who we are and the real effects of inequality that action follows. So take our new resource called Your Story, Your Truth, Your Power, and make the change real. What we know is that when we decouple knowledge from privilege, we are at our strongest and most effective. We don't just believe that, we have made it core to our programs globally, in the southern US, and through our global hub. Whether you are a DEI leader in Brazil or an ERG member in India, the hub provides real-time exchange of ideas, best practices, resources, message boards, and more. Our work is too urgent and too nuanced to wait for any top-down approach. We need to road test and innovate together on a global scale, heretofore unseen in the LGBTQ space. There is so much ahead if we allow ourselves to leverage the gifts of our circumstances. We can and should aspire to executive and top leadership positions. For those of you who already are or will become executives, I urge you to not lose that valuable perspective from the margin. Stay conscious and capitalize on that outsider knowledge. I am grateful for who you are and what you are bringing to Summit today, and I am so excited to see the future of work we will forge together. Thank you, and welcome to Summit.